welcome to another episode of If Not Now, When? We're living in a world, in a time where everything around us is confrontational, conflict driven, bombs are exploding, people are at each other, whether it's social media or ammunition, it doesn't matter. We are so polarized. We have forgotten how to meet each other in the middle. We've forgotten how to take perspective, and we've forgotten how to have difficult conversations with empathy and understanding to live in a harmonious way. Therefore, it's time for us to have this conversation right now. And I am so delighted and honored to have Dr. Janine Calvo with us to kick off this conversation and preface it with the meat and nuggets we need to continue for the rest of our day.
Thank you, Dr. Kaz. It's such an honor to be here. And I think we can start today with what is courageous communication? Because in the evolving workplace and landscape that we live in, it's so important to understand that we can have effective communication, and it shouldn't be understated. And like you were saying, I like what you were saying about bombs going off all around us. It's not just, it's in the workplace, it's on social media, it's everything. So sometimes we need that courage to have a simple conversation. But it's vital for companies to have that. So courageous communication transcends the regular dialogue, and we partake in courageous communication and conversations on a daily basis. It's about having those difficult conversations when we know that it's not going to go down easy, but we understand it's going to ruffle feathers, but we just have to push through, and we have to have those conversations. There's also, Dr. Kaz, a way to have these conversations, and we're going to be discussing some of those things also today. We are all part of multinational corporations, and therefore we need to understand what is communication, how do we communicate effectively, have difficult conversations, because at the end of the day, those difficult conversations will lead to better outcomes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Difficult conversations with mindfulness and making sure that that conversation is nonviolent, right? Because you can say something in a very violent approach that shuts everybody down. And here we are having this conversation between Belize, Nigeria, South Africa. We are global. I come from Sri Lanka, so we all represent different interests, different perspectives. I would love to now invite James, the founder of Destiny Connect Foundation, a not-for-profit that is serving so much need in our world around us. James, what are your thoughts as we go into this conversation?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaz. And wow, what a profound input and a great way to start this podcast, Dr. Janine. And, difficult conversation, whether we like it or not, we must have it. And because that is where the growth lies. That is where change lies. But difficult conversation needs to be had with love. We need to communicate those difficult conversations. We need to communicate those hard topic. We need to talk about it. Like now, the bombs that is going on around the world, in Israel and everywhere around the world, it's not even there. Even at the workplace, there's a lot of ammunition. There's a lot of bomb that has been released, but it depends on what kind of bomb it is. So, and we have to have that conversation if we need to see change, if we need to experience growth. But how we have that conversation will determine the kind of growth, the kind of change that we experience. So, and this kind of difficult conversation needs to be had with love, with true love. And I believe that love is the center of everything. And love is the greatest currency of humanity. So if we can have that, if you and I can have that difficult conversation at the base of love, that, okay, I love you. No matter what, either I have this conversation with you or not, we're still going to do, in one way or the other, we still have to coexist. We still have to do things together. We still have to help one another. We still have to see each other as a human. together. So, and that is at the center of love. So difficult conversation it's a must for us to have it. And I love the topic of this show. If it is not now, when? If it's not now, if we are not going to have that difficult conversation now, when? So I think that is my
beautiful. And there's nothing like the present, right? Now is the time. Present is all we have. And a dear friend and my co-host of If Not Now When, Kunle coming to us from Nigeria in his traditional garb and his captivating and influencing smile. Kunle, jump into the conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaz. I'm feeling highly elated already, not only because of the introduction, but because of the introduction of this podcast that we heard from Dr. Janine and also from my brother all the way in South Africa, James, right in there. And it's such a wonderful thing to talk about this thing because it is very important in our world. More than ever, we need to start having that mindset of creating conversations around difficult issues or seemingly difficult issues, because I believe that is where the power lies. And that's where we take the power away from the problem that is associated with people not talking about mental health, not speaking up, the problem associated with peace. That's the global peace, just as we spoke about, we're experiencing in Ukraine and Russia, in Israel and Gaza, or in Israel and Palestine, in different space, and even in the workplaces. It stems from us having what I call open and safe spaces to create this conversation whereby people are free, people are comfortable, people are so open to really come out and talk about those difficult things, because we know that is where the solution lies, where we know that when we talk, nobody is going to shut us up. When we talk, that's where we are going to really see where the limelight is, create solution that will definitely be like a pathway to where we're going to live in shared prosperity in one way or the other. So what I used to tell people is the fact that when you see me, I don't want you to see first what I am wearing or how, a bushy or afro my hair looks, but I want you to see my heart first, because conversation starts not from the mouth or from the lips, but right from the heart. So in creating difficult conversation, just like I want to tell everyone who is listening right in here today, is we need to look deep down in our heart. And that's where empathy lies, because that is what's going to give people or afford them that opportunity to speak up without the fear of being judged, without the fear of being pushed aside. And that's how we're going to create solution in our world today.
Beautiful. I love how you are building on the conversation and truly talking about getting the heart engaged first. Yes. Dr. Janine, we were talking before the program started, the importance of having elements in place that allows us to be seen and heard and engage with each other, so that when the times come for difficult conversation, that can organically happen. We were talking about music, we were talking about food. Can you go into that and talk about the importance of creating those common spaces and common denominators so that we have a base to connect from?
That's 100%, Dr. Kaz, because the thing is, even as organizations, we need to ensure that we create psychological safety zones for our employees. And like we just said, is employees should feel safe to share their views without the fear of retribution. And we should promote that active listening, because communication is at the root of courageous conversations. If we can communicate well, then people will feel safe and they will know that I can come to you, I can have a difficult conversation, and I can walk out of here today and I know we will still fine. And we don't just connect in the office. As we said earlier as well, we connect through food, through music, through conversation. We have to take the relationship outside the office in a is still in a professional way, but outside the office, because you have to build in more ways than one. Communication for courageous conversation is key. And we have to create spaces and places for people to, like you also said, Kunle, to be able to not fear to have a conversation like that. We have to prioritize face-to-face interactions. As much as I love an online meeting, a podcast, a webinar, I still believe we need to prioritize face-to-face conversations. We have to connect, like we said, with the heart of that person. And that's not always easy online or over a telephone. So if we create those spaces for people to truly connect with us, then these conversations will become much easier. And I'm sure we can just associate with that in our own lives. You can have a conversation with your husband or your wife or a friend that's more difficult than you would have with a stranger. Why? Because you've built common ground. And that's what we need to build within organizations and within our circles, is we need to build common ground by helping people to have face-to-face interaction, to allocate time for open dialogue. We need to have regular meetings or a coffee or a lunch or a supper so that we can have that open dialogue and create, again, those spaces. And then maybe lastly, I can just say it needs to be consistent. Consistent communication also helps with these kind of things, because you don't have that consistent communication. We say, you know what, that friend of mine, we lost touch. And if you lose touch with somebody, it's going to be very hard to have that courageous conversation. So for me, that is the things that we need to keep in mind. Create those spaces, create those places for people to feel safe, and make sure that you allocate the time. There needs to be trust and transparency, and there's always a growth opportunity involved. I always say this, Dr. Kaz, is you've got an opinion, I've got an opinion. We only have a solution when we put the two together. Mm-hmm. And that can also come from courageous conversations.
Absolutely, because opinions ultimately don't move the needle. Our ability to collaborate and implement something, have a shared call to action, that's what's going to change everything. So absolutely, yes, psychological safety so that we can speak up, creating spaces and places to have that, and respecting each other. The minute we dehumanize the other, then the conversation is dead, right? And some societies and some communities are so good at intentionally dehumanizing others and then weaponizing social media and all of these communication tools and appealing to the hearts of people and then alienating that dehumanized population even further. That's the reality we're facing. And that is a reality South Africa has dealt with. The communities that have been colonized have dealt with, minorities have dealt with, and people who have lost their lands dealt with, right? Same way people who are trying to do constructive things in the workplace sometimes have to deal with. So Kunle, coming from the mental health space, what is your advice and tips in terms of how do we stop the dehumanization? How do we create spaces and places of psychological safety so that everybody shows up? We're all a being, right? There's a soul. We recognize and honor the soul and accept the fact that that soul shows up in different gift wraps.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cass. That's so wonderful. And this is very important because people have suffered a lot when it comes to mental health because of so many stigma attached to it. You know, in some parts of Africa, you don't even talk about it because they feel it's a taboo. And that's one of the issues we face when we step into that space to create conversations around mental health. You face a lot of, rejection, a lot of inacceptance, and brick walls because of the perception of people. So the first thing is for us to come to the realization of the fact that this is something about everybody. So if you laugh at someone who has a mental health related issue, it's like pointing a finger to someone where at least 3 of other fingers are pointing to you. So for us to come to that realization that this is like a common denominator to everybody in the society, for us to embrace it. And that's what will make people now feel comfortable to create conversations around it. The reason is because once you know that there is no stigma attached to it, then when someone who is going through it now has any issue like that, then they know that when they speak up, there's not going to be any backlash whatsoever in that regard. So by that, people are free, the spaces are open, and then there will also be more people who will be willing to create and offer support to anyone who is going through that. And one more thing that I also used to tell people is the fact that you don't even need to be a therapist, you don't need to be a professional at all sometimes. All the people need some time. Also, people need sometimes might be known, because even speaking up a lot of wounds sometimes, when you offer that space for people to speak, thereafter then you can now create conversations around going to see professional. But if you create if we make the world a safe space, a safe haven whereby people can just speak freely without the fear of being discriminated, without the fear of being stigmatized, then it will be like a space whereby everyone talks about mental health and prioritize it more than ever. Dr. Kass.
Thank you so much, Kunle. That is so profound and much needed. Nowhere in the world mental health is prioritized, to a point where in countries like US and Canada, medical professionals are quitting their job because if they say I'm stressed out and I'm having mental health issues, their license will be revoked. Right? We have taken this to such an oblivion that we're doing more harm than help. And I love how you are such a staunch advocate for mental health and creating spaces and places to make that legitimate and normalize it. James, as you look at the world and try to solve the problems and concerns we have through the vehicle of Destiny Connect Foundation, where do you see the opportunity for the organization as a not-for-profit supporting other not-for-profits around the world and having causes that itself focuses on? Where do you see the opportunity for Destiny Connect Foundation and what impact can we create?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kass. Wow, enough has been said already. But I would just like to say that in order to create a just and equitable world, we need to understand the power of human connection. I cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. And we cannot have that courageous conversation where there is fear, where there is where we are experiencing unjust society, where I am not comfortable, where you are not I'm not ready to meet you at the place where you are. You are not ready to meet me where I am. So there's no way that we can actually create an equitable and just world if there is this segregation, if there is this fear. Fear is the absence of courage. We cannot have that courageous conversation whereby I'm open and I'm free. And I know that Kunle would not judge me. Dr. Kass will not judge me. Dr. Janine will not judge me. I'm going to talk about what I'm facing. I'm going to talk about what I'm experiencing in my region, in my life, in my space, and you are going to take it. You are going to meet me at the point of where I am, So I think in order for us to create this just world, to create this equitable world, we need to really understand the power of human connection. And for Destiny Connect Foundation, that is where we are standing on, to bring people together, to form that meaningful connection, whereby everyone have that equitable access to create a just world and bring that positive change in the life of people and in our own life as well. I cannot have conversation. I cannot pick up on courageous conversation with someone that that I'm not free with, that I don't trust if they're going to judge me, if they're going to put me down, So, but in order for us to create that just world, and to bring about positive change, we need to understand the power of human connection and how we can build that in a meaningful way, whereby everyone understand each other's culture, everyone understand where you are coming from, and not just to be, side. A lot of things is happening in our world today. Like you said earlier on, South Africa, is battling, and we are still in that mental slavery of what has happened to us, past trauma of how we've been treated. So a lot of things are happening, but until we start to meet each other where we are, and start to understand each other's, point of need and how we can come together to build that equitable and just world. I think we can only do that where there's no fear, because courage is the absence of fear. And where there's fear, there's no courage, and we can never have that courageous conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James. Janine, as we start wrapping this up, you had talked about trust. Everybody here has talked about trust. And trust has to happen in an environment where everybody feels that they can be seen and heard and they're not invisible, right? And in a ever polarizing world, what tips or tools can you share with folks to enter any human interaction with the opportunity to build that trust and build that humanity without destroying it? Because once we've destroyed it, we are never going to come to the table. And two things can be true, right? I stand here and draw a 6 and I insist it's a 6. You're across from me and you say, oh, but no, Cass, that's a 9. We can argue all day. We're both right, right?
Yeah.
Both situations can be factually correct, historically correct, but there's no reason for us to fight over it. We have to find that common ground. And in the example, I always say, okay, here comes Kunle, and he looks at from the side and says, oh, Dr. Cass and Dr. Janine, you're both wrong. It's actually an alphabet in a Zulu language or whatever language it is, right? There is more than two realities. What advice do you have for folks to engage in that courageous conversation with an open mind and heart, so that ultimately our humanity has an opportunity to survive and thrive?
So the first thing I always say when it comes to communication is to set boundaries, because there is certain communication and conversations that should be had, and then there's others who shouldn't be had. So we have to draw that line and set the boundaries on what we can and cannot talk about. Because what happens often when we speak about courageous communication, people think now I can speak about everything. That is not always the case. So we need to set boundaries in certain things. It always needs to be professional. It always needs to respect the other person. And that's why I say that. That's why boundaries are important. Because the misconception about this is, now that we can have this conversation, I can say whatever I want and however I want it. And therefore, boundaries is important, because you can only do that and have these conversations, we said, if there's trust, if there's mutual respect, and those kind of things. So boundaries is important. You have to set your boundaries. You have to stay in contact. Like I said before, you build trust through staying in contact. You spend time on quality conversations, not just any conversation, quality conversations. I fully believe that when I enter a room and when I exit the room, there needs to be impact. There needs to be impact. We mustn't just talk about wishy-washy things. We need to make impact in our conversations. It needs to be quality conversation. It needs to build up each other. It needs to be a unified vision or something that of value that we are working towards. So we need to make time for quality conversations. James said it. We need to show love and pay attention to detail. For me, we know communication has got a lot to do with what we say, but it's also got a lot to do with how we say it. Mm-hmm. Our body language, our tone of voice, all of those things is very, very important. I remember when I started in sales many years ago, one of the tips that they gave us was, you never lie down on your back or on a couch or slouched in your chair when you do a sales call, because that person will hear it. You walk or you stand up or you sit up straight. And I thought, but that's not sales. That's normal human communication, So So how we communicate with people really, really matters. And then show love and pay attention to detail. That's what I was saying. And then, you know, I always say is we need to share our successes with each other. I am a very big fan of sharing vision with people higher than you so that they can help you to get to your vision. But I also believe that we need to be able to share our successes with the people around us. So we have people to help us celebrate. And then when we share that successes and our losses, we also have people to pull us up. But that comes through trust. Trust takes time. Trust takes time.
Absolutely. But trust is a currency that once we squander, we can't build it back either. It is one of those precious, precious things in life that we have to earn to get, and we have to keep earning to keep it. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your passionate tips and tools that is going to help people truly start transforming their lives. Kunle, as we bring this to a close, how can people get a hold of you? And what closing thoughts do you have for our audience here?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm very active on the social media, which is also a point of connect for people right now. So at Kunle Pelemo on all the social media, be it LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, not yet on TikTok.
Okay.
So you can catch me up in there, and then on the website for we can also you can get the services I render through that organization right in there. Thank you, Dr. Cass.
Thank you so much, Kunle. James, what is the best way for folks to learn and get to know Destiny Connect Foundation, and any closing thoughts?
Thank you so much, Dr. Cass. Okay, I'm only on LinkedIn for now. Because I love social media. I love interacting with people, but I'm more of in person, meeting people where they are, in person. But digitally, I'm only on LinkedIn. So you can find me on James Ojo on LinkedIn, and on the True Destiny Connect Foundation. You can find us and contact us through www.dcfnetwork.org. So you can reach out to us there, and it's about bringing the humanity together to make a lasting impact. And it all starts with what we are talking about today, having that courageous conversation whereby everyone feel respected, feel valued, and feel heard. And we can collaborate together to make that impact, because if that avenue is not open to each and every one of us, then there's no way that we can make that greater impact. And it all starts with conversation. It all starts with communication.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. It is truly my honor and pleasure to call each one of you my friend. It is truly one of those priceless gifts of life. And Dr. Janine and James and I get to be on the board of Destiny Connect Foundation. So we hope all of you will go find the Destiny Connect Foundation, connect with us, engage with us, collaborate with us, so that we can help you make an impact in your own community. Because ultimately we are a human community, and geography is just that line somebody drew on a map. Humanity and our soul has no boundaries, but our conversations need to have it. So please go out there and start making an impact. Create safe places and spaces. Bring your heart into the conversation and give everybody the opportunity to be seen, heard, and understood, so that you are part of building a world that each of us absolutely deserve. Thank you.